Hey guys, and welcome back to the Movie Club Emporium. And I know I promised you last week that we were going to talk about Cuckoo, and I will tell you right now, next week we are ending the month of September with that review. But in light of, essentially in light of finally seeing this movie that I've been watching the spoiler-filled trailer for since what feels like January, we're finally going to talk about the American remake of Speak No Evil. Now, I do promise to tread softly with spoilers. I'll try not to give too many specifics outside of what you've already been spoiled on in that trailer, which, okay. Speak No Evil. This is a 2024 remake of a 2022 Danish film. That's right. This movie is only 2 years old, and they thought, no, we need an American remake. Now, if you, and probably most of you haven't, followed Movie Club for a long time, whether it be here on YouTube, on all the 10 plus years of videos we did on Facebook, our written blogs we had on Blogspot and MySpace, to really date ourselves. I very early on took on the reputation of being anti-remake guy, um, which I feel is unjust. Two of my favorite films are remakes, um, and I've enjoyed quite a few, but I am one who is hypercritical of what feels like a a unnecessary remake, in as much as if we are doing it for a specific reason other than doing our own version of the story, while also kind of taking away the impact of that original film, I'm very anti that. Even from filmmakers who have remade their own films. I mean, because it kind of is maybe a little bit to talk about here. You know, Michael Haneke's Funny Games felt very unnecessary. This film, again, it's a Danish film, but it is mostly in English. So the idea of it just being an English adaptation, like something like The Ring or all the J horror that came out in the early 2000s, that isn't it. This movie is mostly in English. It kind of felt very much in that category of kind of why are we doing this? And after seeing the film, I will say that um most of the problems I had going into this movie before seeing it, I still had, and some more after leaving the theater. First and foremost, let me say this though: if you are not familiar with the original, I highly do recommend that movie. It's on Shudder. It premiered, that year at Sundance and was kind of the darling of the Sundance when it premiered. Made it to Shudder. Really is a fantastic film. It's a really um, dark and slow descent movie, with a gut punch of an ending. And this is definitely the American audience's need be happy version of that. I will. There is some praise on this to heap on this movie. Number one, what a cast! I mean, James McAvoy is great in most everything he's in. I really like Mackenzie Davis. I thought she was a bright spot in that really not good Terminator movie, and I loved her in Even she was even the best part of that terrible turning of the Screw movie that came out in conjunction, like right at the same time as the second season of Haunting of Hill House, the Bly Manor season. I think she's great. And Scoot McNairy, aka not Skeet Ulrich, I like seeing him in things. You know, he was a main fixture in season 3 of True Detective, and I thought he was fantastic in that. Um, but in this movie, he has some problems. We'll kind of get into here in a little bit. Um, I thought the movie's beautiful. They definitely were telling a different aesthetic movie because the first movie I get it's about a Danish couple and a Dutch couple who meet on vacation, and the movie is a Danish film, and it's kind of a look at um the stereotype of the Danish being overly polite, like to a fault. Think of like how Americans perceive Canadians. Um, kind of like that. It very much should have been if we were gonna do an English remake of it, we should have done it as Canadians and Americans. Because that's kind of what the movie is about, the original. And I'm not gonna him haw and go beat by beat comparing and contrasting. But this movie definitely more on the side of dealing with. It really amps up the awkwardness, which I is not something I'm a huge like douche chills aren't like it's not a scary point for me. It's usually my least favorite part of horror movies. It's just awkward, uh, like cringe stuff. Um, what is interesting is this film's take on the characters because like I said, Scoot McNairy, he plays the American father, and in the original, that character is not he's a sad man. He is a unhappy man, mostly because he sees the life that the other gentleman leads, and kind of wants to reclaim some of his just freedom. In this movie, this is definitely a Mackenzie Davis movie, which is fine because she's great. But they make Scoot McNairy. They just make him a big dummy because every wrong decision is his. He's like just makes the worst decisions. And then again, I never say I love James McAvoy. And in this movie, they really lean into like, hey James McAvoy, um, in this movie, why don't you play Jack Nicholson in The Shining? Because as a character for this man, he needs to be charming, yes, but you also he needs to be very normal until it's time to not be normal. Quirky, but still like not a sociopath. And James McAvoy starts at 11. And just he's just there all the time. It's very much that's the best comparison is Nicholson in The Shining, man. Like from the just meeting him, he's got the smile on his face. You're like, don't trust that man. Don't ever trust anybody who looks like that. Um, and if you're like me, you've been seeing this trailer since it feels like time in memoriam. Like I can't think of a time before seeing this trailer before every single movie, regardless of what genre it was. Uh, this movie trailer was in front of it, and that trailer, if you've seen it, it's not it's a big spoiler, but it's in the trailer. Is the reveal of the affliction of the little boy, the McAvoy and his wife's little boy, and how sinister that is. And for the original version, like that's a huge like oh my god reveal, and like this again they just give it away in the trailer, And like that's a huge twist, man. What are we doing? Like where do we go from there? And seeing that in the trailer for the very first time, I immediately sank into my seat because I was like, "Oh, this movie isn't this movie is not going to do it. Like this movie's going to pump the brakes on the ending." Again, not getting into spoilers of the original because I really think you should check it out. That movie has an ending that will haunt you for weeks. And this one is so much the whole well you can't do that in an American movie. So um like it almost gives it a fairy tale happy ending. Um which while having some brutality in the climax, some pretty harsh brutality in the climax, really doesn't give you the punch that movie that original earns. Also, this one is 15 minutes longer because, of course, it is. And really, that's all that is tied into the third act because in this movie, the first two acts, Act One and Act Two, are very similar to the original, even starting off with some of the same dialogue. It's in the third act when we have to do the twist. We've already spoiled, and we have to just kind of dive into because McAvoy's been at 11 this whole time. He's ready to pop. Um, is where all the changes come, and that's really kind of where that extra 15 minutes comes in, because and not really to the benefit of the film. Um, there is a moment at the end where the question is asked about the motives of what is happening. And the characters very nonchalantly give this one sentence answer that is just the most haunting and disturbing and vile piece of real life horror that you could possibly have. Um, and it's so effective. And in this one, that line is delivered, but it's like sandwiched between just all this needless, dumbed down, listen up, you stupid idiots, breakdown of motives and why and who's and what's. And it's unneeded. It feels like, hey, Americans, hey, over, come here, open your mouth, here comes the airplane. And it really does just kind of meh that moment of that line in the original that is just again it's just like I remember watching the film and that line is delivered and like it just takes your breath away. It's so like oh my god, that's just like almost stomach churning, um, gut punch. And in this one it's just so much of well, here's why, and you gotta know because we gotta explain to you guys won't get it. We're not subtle. Uh, and then again, the ending. Like again, I won't spoil it, but it is a very different ending, dramatically different ending. Um, and while I think most unfamiliar audiences will be satisfied with the ending, uh, it to me it didn't work. Unlike say The Strangers Chapter 1 earlier this year, which changes the ending slightly because we are building into a trilogy. This one very dramatically changes the ending and kind of changes the whole nature of the film. Um, without context and without any specifics, it's like um, watching The Mist and then watching a remake of The Mist, uh, with a much more like the Mist, but with sorry, I'm messing with the blister. The Mist with a more like family friendly ending. Um, so yeah, it looks great. The acting in it is great. It is brutal, but at the end of the day, this just feels unnecessary because again, this isn't a movie that's bringing a foreign film to a mainstream audience because we can't you make the joke about something like this 2024 uh um Parasite won Best Picture. A foreign film has won Best Picture. um we there are a lot of great foreign films that subtitles are fine. So the idea of if it was that we want them. This is a mostly English film, and it's just kind of remade to kind of be dumbed down for the general populace, and that kind of sucks. So I don't necessarily recommend it. I do recommend watching the original. I would say I'd be curious if you've seen the original and now this remake. What are your thoughts on it? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Make sure you leave that below. And then next week, speaking of remakes and whether or not they're unnecessary, will be our live stream, our monthly live hangout over at our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/the Movie Club Emporium. Nick and I are going to be breaking down the Crow franchise. Um, from comic book to 2024 remake with the Skarsgård fella. So, and everything in between, including soundtracks, video games, you name it. Uh, we're going to be talking about it. So it's going to be an absolute blast. You do not want to miss that. Twitch.tv /Movie Club Emporium next Saturday, where we are talking about the Crow franchise. And then next week, we will be ending our September catch up with the film Cuckoo, and then sliding right into October, which is our Halloween horror month. This month our Halloween month, we are talking about anthologies. The theme is Tell Me a Story. So we're doing anthology films, and first up will be we'll be talking about the brand new entry into the now long-running VHS franchise, VHS Beyond. We're adding a little bit of sci-fi peanut butter into this horror chocolate. I'm super excited to see how they do. And so join us for that as well. And until next week when we're talking Cuckoo, I'll see you guys then. Bye.